just because the main host is out. So that's the reason why you're here, Mike.
Perfect. I think I can work with that.
Yeah, that's it. I know people don't like to take the role, say, yeah, it's like, but it's no stress. It's just keeping me company. That's basically what it is.
I'm happy to do that.
Anyway, we're live, everybody, or at least we should be live. So welcome to Brainfood Live on Air, episode 299. This is a special, of course. We're doing this as a weekly doubleheader. We never usually do your shows on Thursday, but we wanted to do it this week because we had to squeeze this one in. The schedule was fully booked until Mike had a chat with me and said, hey, listen, we've got this really cool data. We want to share it. And I read the report and I thought, you know what, actually we do. We need to tell agencies this is what's up. So it should be a really fantastic show. The topic is going to be, what do top recruitment agencies do differently? How do we know sort of about this? Is because Bullhorn have done a massive report on the industry, which is basically being able to pick out who are the top performing companies and what are they doing that makes them that way. It's going to be a really interesting read. Anybody who's in recruiting, particularly on the agency side, should be interested in this. Okay, let's do some AVs firstly. I just want to make sure everyone can hear me okay. So folks on Crowdcast, if you can hear me okay, let me know in the chat. We should also be broadcasting this on LinkedIn, number of LinkedIns actually, including Bullhorn's own LinkedIn page. So if you're watching this on that, or you're possibly watching it on my LinkedIn or anybody else's LinkedIn, do let me know whether you can hear and see me okay. Just drop us a comment on there, let us know. Okay, Audra's saying they can hear us here on Crowdcast, which is good. Getting a few comments through on LinkedIn as well, which is fine. Mike, can you check if Bullhorn page is up? Is that
Yes,
actually
I
firing
did.
or not?
It is firing.
Let's have a look. Is it there?
It is.
Let's have a look. Oh, amazing. Look at that. We have Bullhorn, sort of we're live streaming on Bullhorn's main page. It's a tremendous honor because I've known Bullhorn for ages and I've actually known Art for ages as well. So Art, listen, quick shout out to you. Great to collaborate on this way down the track. Anyway, I've got a co-host here with me today. So why don't I welcome, in fact, why don't you introduce yourself, Mike, and who are you and what it is you do?
Yeah, sure. I'm Maiken. I work at Bullhorn as their marketing manager in the UK. I have the pleasure of doing all the fun things, so LinkedIn Lives with Hung Lee and webinars and just hosting events in general. So yeah, I've got the fun job here at Bullhorn, and I've been employed for 4 years now.
Yeah, fantastic. It does sound like the fun job. I mean, there probably is worth looking at, like, what's the bad things about doing the job that you're doing. But at the moment, from what you've described, it sounds fantastic. So okay, Mike, and that's great stuff. And you're the one obviously brought this report into us, and we'll talk about that in shortly. But as always, the co-host has got to kind of do a job, which is to review the newsletter last week. So did you read it? And if so, what was interesting? 2 or 3 things that you thought, okay, that's kind of and crossed my mind. And thought that was quite cool.
Yeah, no, I did. I did read it. Of course, I did. I think the one of the first things that I found really interesting was this piece about being a cybernetic teammate. I thought that was really interesting. So it's basically it's a research paper talking about how we should see AI not just as a tool, but we can see it as a genuine teammate. And yeah, I thought that was really interesting because I'm definitely still seeing, and I work with AI, but I still see it as a tool, and there's just so much more that we can kind of learn and understand about how we can use generative AI.
I'm going to
But
psychologically struggle with it. I got to be honest. Because I am. I think it's a big category shift, isn't it? Like, it's a
yeah,
tool. Like, you control demand. You can say what it wants. You can instruct. But in fact, this paper is saying actually the most advanced usages of AI is that it actually becomes much more autonomous and it changes team dynamics, such that was a very interesting finding. They found that it helped de-silo certain teams. So if you have teams that were very heavily a component of a certain vertical, let's say you had a marketing team, Micah, and it was just your marketing team doing marketing stuff, good chance you're going to have some groupthink in there. And then, it will
yeah,
emerge with obviously marketing sort of mindset. Okay, you put AI in there and actually instruct it to behave like a salesperson. Okay, you are, and actually gives you potentially a way to escape that echo chamber. And I just thought, wow, that's
yeah.
interesting. obviously
Really
useful,
interesting.
but it's something I've got to segue into. Like I haven't like psychologically got
No,
into it myself.
no, totally. And I think, you know, that's the thing with AI. I think you need to see it to believe it, and you need to work with it, and you have to be very specific with the examples that you're mentioning before people actually understand it. And that's what we're seeing at Bullhorn as well with our clients, that those are the questions that they're asking. They want to see like specific use cases of how it works. So there'll be a lot of
Mm-hmm.
education for all of us still.
Yeah, and everyone's looking forward to seeing what sort of AI initiatives that might emerge coming out of Bullhorn as well. I think a lot of recruitment companies are probably holding fire on experimentation because they've got some faith that Bullhorn's going to provide a lot of those solutions. Okay, cool stuff. I've just shared a link to that report into the chat. Go and read it. What else is interesting, Mike? Can you give us a couple more?
Yeah, so another one, not as positive, but I thought it was really interesting and definitely something we should, as a society, talk about, is how the older generations are being more terminated than the younger generations, like involuntarily. And I just think this is such an important point. Like we need to, as a society, look at that because we are all getting older, and we're living longer, which is positive, right? But that also means we have to work for a lot longer. But we need to help our older generations stay in the workplace and help them on that journey. So I thought that was really interesting that we're seeing that kind of trend, and obviously that's not the trend we want to be seeing. So yeah, you mentioned you
Very,
wanted to
it's
do a recruiting Brainfood live on it. I thought that was a good idea.
I do it, and I need to do it selfishly. I am one of those people now. It's like literally the case. Yeah, I think all of us like mentally think of ourselves as like 20 years younger than we are. And this number catches up with you when you start sort of seeing, oh, when you're 45 and onwards, it's like on your way out, and you think, hang on, that's me. It's like, holy crap, is that what they're talking about? So yeah, really interesting. I think this report from Deal, by the way, totally in the news recently, which is crazy stories there. But they did produce this cool report, which was about one of the features there was essentially the retention rate for younger generations was just clearly longer than it was for older hires. So it looks like okay, are they firing older people, or are they just getting rid of more expensive people, which tends to correlate with more experience? But bottom line is the outcome is people who are more tenured in their career are getting involuntarily made sort of into job seekers, and it's a tough old market for anybody battling away not only against competition but also against this prejudice and stereotype. Really tough. Don't have a solution, but we've got to find a way because all of us are going to get there at some point, and it will be. We don't want, people don't deserve destitution, after having worked 20, 30 years. That's no way society. It's a breakdown of society if we can't find a way for those talented people to
Yeah,
continue working
and
with
we
someone.
need them as well. We need them, in the job market. So very important point to mention.
It was only like 3 years ago when we were talking about multi-generational workplace, and how
Yeah.
cool that would be to get all that perspective. But since we've had 2 or 3 years of like really being crushed economically, that's all gone out the window. It's like all now, hey, operational efficiency, and obviously the most expensive people out the door. So yeah, really tough. We need to mobilize as an industry, I think, to at least do something about it. Okay, Mike, can you give us one more before we get on with the show?
Yeah, I think the last one that I definitely also found very interesting. I didn't read it as much in depth because some of it was very detailed, but it was about automating sourcing and using AI to in that candidate acquisition process. And I think my biggest takeaway from that, not being a recruiter, was that people really want like a blueprint of how can they use AI to go out and upscale a lot of this admin work, finding the target audience and reaching out to them and making sure that it's not like this spray and pray approach, but it's like super strategic and targeted and getting in front of the right people. And I thought that was just a really great guide of like a step-by-step process of how you could go out and do that.
Yeah, fantastic thing by Alexi Gate. He just basically said, "Hey, here's how I'm doing creating a sourcing engine. That's everything from research, lead generation, enrichment, data enrichment. So finding out the emails and the contact details, launching a drip campaign against all of those people, and then finding an automated way to respond to people who responded. I looked at that and I thought, you know what? That's obviously going to help him find candidates or develop business. And he stitched it together with basically, consumer grade tools. I don't think the entire thing would cost, anything like an enterprise license anywhere. I did have other people say, hey, that's probably GDPR not compliant and all this. Yes, probably not. However, just shows you what can be done if with the technology as it is in the current day. And you can imagine on the vendor side, all of that chain of tools will be just productized at some point, so that you don't have to have the technical capability that Alexei does. They will just say, okay, I want to upgrade to this level, and suddenly you have this. Okay, that's like 80% of a recruiter's job that has currently been is turned into an automated flow, in which case you either do a lot more work, or you find other ways which you can add value. So super interesting, worth looking at. And in fact, I think Alexei is coming on to Brainfood Live in a couple of weeks. We're going to just run through that demo. So we're going to also see how that looks like. Okay, cool. Very good. Let us get on to the topic of du jour. Tell us about this report, Mike, and can you give us some basics of what it is so that the audience understands when Lia and Liam come on, they can understand exactly sort of what the report is, how you've conducted it, who are the people that you've got the data from.
Yeah, so it's an annual report that we always do at Bullhorn. So we do 2 reports a year. One for leaders in recruitment, and it is for agencies, and another one for candidates. So we get kind of like both perspectives. And this one is for the leaders. It's called Grid Industry Trends Report. Every year we kind of change it up a little bit. We're always getting better, trying to understand what people want to hear about. But I think we're in a really good place where we can kind of link what the priorities are that everyone here on the globe are seeing, and what their challenges are right now, because it changes from year to year. And we can kind of also link what they're reporting in terms of revenue growth year on year to how they're using technology and or what they want to do with technology. So what's really interesting with that link is we can then say, okay, people who are using these specific things in their recruitment workflow are seeing more or less revenue. And these are the things exactly that are giving the most your bang for your buck, basically.
Yeah,
Um,
really, really
and then I know
interesting.
Leah's gonna talk more about like the how we conducted it, but it's taken from thousands of recruitment professionals across the globe.
Yeah, fantastic. We're gonna get onto this ASAP, but before I do that, folks on Crowdcast, I want you to direct your eyes to the right-hand sidebar of your screen. There should be a poll on there. I want you to go and click on that poll and just give us some answers here. Agencies only. How is 2025 looking so far? Give us an answer. Harder than 2024, same as 2024, easier than 2024. Put some votes in. Let's have a look at where we're at with this. Okay, whilst we're getting those votes in, let's bring in Liam and Lia, and they can guide us through this deck. Okay, let's get Liam in first. Rather conveniently well sort of spelled these two. I can easily find them. Let's get them on screen here.
Yes, it's a very
I think it's
close
great,
name.
by the way. Yeah, but I think it's great that you do like a annual report. That way you can do a time series on it, and it's a reliable thing for the industry. Okay, we have our friends on screen. Fantastic. Why don't we just do some quick intros? Liam, why don't you introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Yeah, no worries. Hi, my name's Liam Ryan. I work as part of the product marketing team at Bullhorn. So my responsibility is our automation and AI go-to-market. So our products, our packaging, all around AI and automation, which is a very prevalent in the market at the moment.
I'm sure you're the most busiest man in Bullhorn right now,
Just a little
Liam.
bit, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're getting pinged by everyone saying what's down the pipeline, because everyone
100%.
needs to know. But hey, good to be desired, Liam. Good to be
Absolutely, yeah.
wanted.
Absolutely.
And we have Lia here as well. Lia, great to see you. Introduce yourself. Who are you and what it is you do?
Sure. And I will just echo, Liam is the busiest person in the company right now, and everyone wants a piece of Liam. He handles it with great, good grace. I'm Lia Taniguchi. I'm the Senior Research Manager at Bullhorn. So what I do is I handle all of our grid research, all of our economic tracking, our Bureau of Labor Statistics tracking, pretty much everything that relates to industry and market research.
Fantastic. I've just shared the link of both of those two in the chat as well. So if you want to connect with those two, go ahead and do it. I think it'll be well worth your while. Okay, Lia, let's just dive into this. Is there a way you can share screen and get into, I think there's a deck we can have a look at, and we'll just run through that without further ado.
And it is, and it's saying I need to be a host in order to share it.
Oh, do I need
or to be you need to make me a speaker, it says.
Oh my God, this is asking me to do things I don't understand. Let's have a look.
I can also just share my screen if that is easier.
No. Let me just upgrade you. I'm gonna make you a speaker. Boom. See this? This is like fixing things on the fly, folks. I can see a label saying you're a speaker, Lia. Do you want to give it another shot and see if that works?
Yep.
Oh my goodness, there we go. I love it.
Success. We've already covered the first hurdle, Hung. We're doing well.
Technical folks here, their credibility is through the roof. So fantastic. Folks, can you all see the screen? It should say Bullhorn Grid. Let me know in the chat whether you can see okay, particularly if you're on LinkedIn. We don't know whether that connection is good or bad, but you should see a slide deck with a Bullhorn Grid on the front. Let me know whether that's something you can see okay. Okay, yeah,
looks like we're good.
They can. So cool. Let's go.
Great. So just to give a little bit of detail, I know Mike covered off on some of this. We surveyed, I think it was actually about 1,575 recruitment agencies around the globe. They were well distributed between APAC, Benelux, DACH, North America, UK, and Ireland. We also got at least 15 to 20% from each of our main verticals, commercial, healthcare, and professional. And we tried to have, as you know, it's an opt-in sample, so as distributed a sample as possible across the different staffing types. The bottom line here is that we really believe that this is a representative sample of the trends that are going on in the recruitment industry. And as Hung said at the beginning, our intention was really to understand what priorities are, but also with self-reported revenue gains for those revenue winners, if you will, for 2024, what were they doing differently? What were the answers they were giving that were different? What were the correlations and conclusions we could draw that we could then share with your audience about what they might want to think about in terms of where they focus their time, their attention, their investment in technology, their business strategies, so they can also, I mean, I think a lot of what you're going to see here is a theme around doing more with less, being more efficient. I don't think it's a shock to anyone for me to say 2024 was another rough year in recruitment on top of, a couple of rough years. So a lot of what we found is agencies being really strategic, really savvy, really efficient with their resources. And the ones who were able to do that in ways that were nimble and agile and responsive to the marketplace continue to do well in spite of economic headwinds. I think you'll also see that it's just going to position those firms to be even more competitive when we start to see the economy turn around. They're going to be in a really good position to have all of that efficiency drive right to the bottom line when hopefully, fingers crossed, we start to see some improvement. Oh, and I will say, like, Liam, jump here, and Mike and anyone jump in anytime. Hung, if you have questions, please feel free to just interrupt me. One of the first things we wanted to do was really talk to firms and understand from them the things that they were doing to weather this bad economy. And we were asking them what their strategies were to improve financial performance. And I'm a data wonk, so I'm going to say, like, I actually think this is one of the most interesting times that we can ask these questions when everything is good. When we were at the peak of COVID and there were 1 million job wrecks and everyone had, 10 to 15% salary increases and pay to move. You don't have to be as strategic, but I think that we can learn so much more.
You don't have to be any good, Lia. Yeah, you don't have to be any good. You learn nothing in those markets. It's like everyone was making money. I mean, it was crazy. So yeah, absolutely. I think it's times like this that's where you get to understand what are the behaviors that make the difference.
And I do think that along with that is what we're hearing from many, many of our customers and throughout the marketplace. It's also incidentally my job to listen to all of the quarterly earnings calls for the top 15 or 20 major recruitment agencies across the globe. So what I'm also hearing in those, as well as I should have said at the top, we made an addition to our methodology for the grid industry survey this year, which is that we added a qualitative piece. So I also went and spoke to 7 or 10 recruitment executives about some of these results to ask them to add like color commentary and some depth so we can understand how they were feeling about this. And what we've been hearing pervasively is a sense that we might not see a true economic snapback that goes back to the pre-COVID days. What everyone is sort of anticipating is that we will be better than we are now, but we're going to level off at some sort of new normal that's below where we were pre-COVID, but is better than where we are today. So given that as context, what are agencies doing to try and continue to improve their financial performance? One is really focusing on gaining market share, right? A lot of people are saying, we want to be well positioned when we do get back to the new normal. We want to look at the ways that we can gain market share, even if it's not necessarily gaining market share or share of wallet. I think both of those. Another is this huge focus on using technology to improve recruiter productivity. As I said, there's a big theme in this of doing more with less. How can you increase capacity without adding headcount? Right. We're in an industry where traditionally a lot of what we've done is if we wanted to have more capacity, we hired more people. And that's no longer possible. It's also never really been advisable if there were other ways that you could be more efficient and get more productivity. And I think that, again, because of the economic climate, is something that agencies have had to look at. Another interesting thing that I'm going to dive into in a whole section is that agencies are really looking at how to diversify their business lines, move up to higher margin services, be adding value and partnership to their clients in ways that really embed them in their clients' businesses and help them offer end-to-end solutions that make them true partners, which is obviously beneficial to their clients and also has the upside of making them kind of indispensable. You move decidedly out of the realm of being a vendor or a service provider to being a strategic partner, and it just makes it that much more sticky, right? So that's a big trend that we were seeing.
Yeah, really, really interesting. Lia, love this so far. Go ahead.
So one of the things that, as I said before, is we tried to cut the data by the people who reported that they saw revenue growth in 2024 in spite of all the economic headwinds, and then find the commonalities of the things that they were doing differently. And they sort of bubbled up to these 4 key themes. The first is that the highest performing firms were really leaning into automation across their entire workflow and focusing it heavily on what would make their recruiters the most efficient. And one of the things that's important is that they were really looking at it as a platform. They're really looking at all the places that they can have automation. And Liam, you can weigh in this as well. But one of the things we're really thinking a lot about at Bullhorn is the fact that automation and AI are really just one spectrum, and automation builds the foundation for you to get the most out of AI. And you need to be thinking about both of them in a platform context. So the second takeaway is that the most successful agencies are not standing on the sidelines paralyzed by the complexity of getting started with AI. They're biting off what they can chew. They're diving in. They are implementing AI throughout their business from a platform approach, but they're also looking at it strategically in terms of what is reasonable for me to take on now in terms of AI? Where is it really helpful for me in the workflow? Where am I going to get the most bang for my buck? And I don't know, Liam, if you want to weigh in at all.
Just to reiterate, or just to help everybody on the call understand, when we mean by platform approach, it's really about using technology as an enabler for AI success. So what we mean by that is you need all of your data in a single place. There's no point in having data in multiple siloed locations because AI needs that data and uses that data to create its output. So when we mean by platform, it's really understanding where your workflows are, digitizing those workflows, but then making sure that you've got access to all that data in a single unified manner so that you can deploy AI on top of that. And as Lia said, really just to sort of cut out the complexity of AI and those that are fearful of AI, we've got used as an industry to automation, and automation's been around for 5, 6, 7 years now, and automating some of our processes. AI is just an evolution of automation. It just means that we can automate more than we could ever do before, because we've now got technology that's able to think and operate like a human would. So things like screening, for example, or sourcing candidates, those human skills and experience-based skills that are needed to be successful in those jobs, those tasks, are able to be sort of done by AI. So it's really about making sure that you understand all your workflows, you understand where your data is, and then really go from a platform approach where you're basically building on top of building blocks. So digitizing, making sure you understand your environment, then building automation on top, and then building AI on top of that. And that's the easiest and sort of most straightforward way to think about it. And as Lia said, not trying to bite off too much too soon.
No,
And I
it's
also to say,
really. Go ahead,
oh,
Lia.
please go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say, not to meander too much, but this really reminds me of the HBS study that Maiken referenced at the beginning of the discussion. It's this notion of starting to think of AI as another person on your team, another resource really there all the time. And one of my favorite recruitment execs who I spoke to as part of the qualitative interviews for this gave me one of my favorite quotes, which was that she said, "We're trying to tell our recruiters that AI is like having a PhD intern sitting on your shoulder, always on, always giving you a new perspective and helping you ask the right questions. And who wouldn't want that?" And it just feels to me like a really powerful way to think about AI.
It also links to the other topic that Mike can raise in terms of the older generations in the workforce, because another great quote that I've had from a customer is around how AI can give you 6 months worth of training in the click of a button. And I think the reason, or one of the reasons why sort of the older generations are being terminated more often, is because they're seen as not as technologically advanced as the younger generations. But actually, AI does help with that gap of understanding and experience of knowledge of technology, because everything that you would normally do with tech, whether it's writing an email or doing research online or whatever it might be, can be done in the click of a button. That actually helps everybody rather than dependent on how old you are.
Yeah, I would hate to, and I'm pretty certain you haven't done this, and I'm not going to ask if you have, but I would hate to have seen like an age demographic kind of split as to who's performing well or not. I'm probably going to lean into stereotypes here, which I don't want to do. But it is critically important that we have a very inclusive approach to artificial intelligence. That all of the people in society are full participants in it, and we have to encourage people that are struggling or finding it a little bit sort of slower to get into the adoption curve, because we can't have people left behind in this flow. By the way, just the people watching on Crowdcast, if you have any questions for Lia or Liam, feel free to use the Q&A feature at the right-hand side of the sidebar again. Go use that tool, simply because we'll go to it at the end, and that's when we'll basically make sure that the questions aren't lost in the flow. But this is great so far, everyone. This is fantastic. Lia, please continue.
Sure. And I will say, Hung, that we didn't do an age demographic on the industry trends because people are answering on behalf of their agency, not necessarily on behalf of themselves. We do, however, do that split on the candidate report that Maiken was referencing. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting with the most recent talent report is actually that comfort with AI goes up with age. What you see is that Gen X's and millennials are actually even more willing than Gen Z to use AI in the recruitment process, to interact with it. They have very few fears around it, even though we all think that. It's somewhere around 80% of a comfort level. And I have a personal theory on this, which is that it really is about millennials and Gen Xers just wanting whatever gets them in the job. Their responses were, if it's faster, if it's better, if it gets me where I need to be, I don't care if it's an agent or a person or a bot or an app, as long as I get what I need. I also, and we could do a whole brain food on this, I think there may be something around Gen Zs having a higher level of expectation on what they need AI to provide for them, because it's so much more native for them. They're a little less willing to deal with a kludgy bot or some sort of app that doesn't quite work, whereas the Gen Xers, the millennials are like, just do it. Yeah, it's harder for them. Sorry. You'll find out
I'm
I'm a meanderer. I'm sorry.
I'm on board with Lia's theories here, folks. What do you think of Lia's theories, which is counterintuitive as far as I knew it, that actually the older generations might be, or have at least stated they're more comfortable with AI than the Gen Zs coming in. Why is that? And yeah, I think maybe urgency to get a job, right? Maybe a little bit of just real world awareness to say, yeah, market is not easy. Just get me through flow. I'm happy to roll with it. So yeah, very, very interesting. Feel free to meander, Lia.
Oh, thanks. I think that also is supported by the fact that you saw less comfort among baby boomers, but who are, approaching a retirement age. But I think when you're dealing with Gen Xers and millennials who are in the heart of their career, they probably have kids and mortgages and aging parents and responsibilities. They really are all about what gets me in the job that I need to be in, making what I need to make as quickly as possible. So it is remarkable. And I will, again, a sidebar, I think this makes it an amazing opportunity for our industry. We have a moment in time of really introducing AI to the world in recruitment. If we do it right, it is very clear to me that there is an appetite. But if we do it wrong, if we get it wrong, if we mess up the candidate experience, if we're not delivering the right search and match, if we're not eliminating bias, if we're instead adding bias through AI, the candidates are going to hold our feet to the fire and they're not going to accept it. And we may set the AI revolution in the field back by 4 or 5 years. I think it's why it's so important to work with industry specific AI partners, to work with people who really have done their research, who have the data to back it up and know how to do it. Because I'm a big believer in, you have one chance, you have one first chance, right? And if we don't do it right, people are going to be talking about it and they're going to be much less likely to be all in on it. So all of us have a collective responsibility to get this right.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Lia. Couldn't agree more.
Which is a great segue to the third takeaway that we had, which is that the firms that are doing the best on revenue are still working to focus on talent engagement, talent experience. They're really delighting talent at every stage of the process. And they're understanding that what the candidates most want, and we saw this in our talent report, is faster placement in the right jobs. It is so frustrating to them when they don't get that. And the firms that are using technology to do that, as well as other relational engagement strategies, are doing really well. And then the last thing that we saw strategically as a differentiator for these high performers was, as I alluded to before, what I think of as specialized diversification. They are moving into these higher margin business lines, but they're doing it in ways that really play to their very, very specific strengths. They are thinking carefully about what they do differently, what makes them special, and then they are building on those strengths to provide high value services to their clients. So I'm going to dig into each of these a little bit more, but one thing, and you got into this, so we can skip over this quickly. You did this in your poll, but one thing I would say, with the big caveat that this was done at the end of 2024, and I think we can all agree that Q1 2025 has had a number of macroeconomic shocks that might change this, but we still saw a fair amount of optimism about the way 2025 is going to play out compared to 2024. So as an industry, we still think that this is going to be a better year than 2024. And, my fingers are crossed that it happens. And I see there's a question about an example of higher margin services. There's going to be a whole section on diversification. And if it's okay, I think I'll hold that until we get to that section and I have some of the data on the screen. So with respect to the first takeaway, I just want to share some of the data around recruiter efficiency by leaning into automation. One thing as context that we saw is that, ironically, the number of firms who report themselves as being in the advanced stages of digital transformation is actually lower than it was last year. And this is the first time in a couple of years that we've seen that decline. Again, I am going to theorize wildly, but my sense of this is because the goalposts have moved on what it means to be in the advanced stages of digital transformation. What would have been advanced 2 years ago is just table stakes now, and agencies realize that, and they know that they are to some degree playing catch up, particularly in a year when they may have had a little less money to invest in technology. So I think this just represents how quickly the standards for technology are changing in our industry. I do also think it's interesting to look at these numbers on where automation is being deployed today. So remember, this is among 1,500 agencies globally, and we're just over 50% who are using automation for search and match, And we are down at a third or less when it comes to things like submitting candidates and some other like middle office functions. Far and away, front office core recruitment functions are much, much more likely to be automated than the middle and back office functions. So my big takeaway here is there's still a lot of low-hanging fruit, right? There's a lot of opportunity for agencies to lean into automation and to think about it not just in terms of the front office. And the reason I think it's important to consider that is because what we found is that automation at every single stage really does correlate with revenue growth. Those green bars are the agencies who reported that their revenue grew in 2024, and they are significantly more likely to have been automating at every stage of the recruitment lifecycle. So it isn't just about automating search and match or automating screening. Everything you do has an impact on revenue. And if you go back to those numbers of, only like 30% of agencies have automated payroll and billing, there's a huge opportunity here. And there are easily deployable existing automation tools. Like, these are not hard to find. Obviously, Bullhorn makes them, and we would like you to lean into our solutions. But these are things that exist that agencies really can take advantage of right now, regardless of their size, regardless of their vertical.
It's like
You
what
know
we said
what?
earlier. I think automation.
Sorry,
was a
sorry,
compounding
Liam.
effect.
Just interrupt there. Leah, can you flick back to the last slide? Because I'm fascinated by this. No disrespect to the agencies. I'm an agent at heart, but this is so stereotypical of us, isn't it? It's like we're like obsessed with the search, find candidates. That's like the core, like in the DNA of every recruiter. Makes sense. Absolutely hit the automation on that, no doubt about it. But let's not neglect all of the back office and the process work and all that type of stuff. That's just
and the business
bleeding into your
development.
time.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that you can do in terms of business development with automation too, and a lot of people just aren't thinking about it.
Yeah. It leads to what I
I
was
think.
going to say, just about compounding
Go ahead,
effects.
Liam.
You can basically, if the amount you automate throughout the process just has a compounding effect on your productivity. So the more that you automate, the more productive, the more efficient you're going to be, and the better, obviously, you're going to find those outputs.
A quick question for everyone here. I mean, for the Bullhorn guys on screen, actually. I mean, are you providing any support for agencies on this way? Like, obviously, I know people buy Bullhorn, it's a software product. You provide all the customer support and all that type of thing. But have you had people come to you and say, "Look, we actually need help to automate process and so on"? And do you provide that as a service? I mean, what's your positioning on this?
Yeah, so we do lots of stuff. We do automation playbooks. We have actually got focus groups where Bullhorn customers can attend and talk questions through, what they're automating, share where they've had success, share where they've got issues, and if there's any sort of ideas from other people out there. So we've got a good community running that Mike has done an amazing job on in terms of bringing people together to talk about how they're automating things and their experience with automation. Even from a professional services perspective, we do lots of different work in terms of playbooks. We've got a Bullhorn hub that goes through all different types of automations that you could be thinking about. So, automation is great in the sense that the possibilities are sort of endless, but one of the sort of things that people struggle with is just where to start. There are so many different possibilities, so many different things that you can do with automation. Just understanding, just getting started can be very sort of overawing to people. So it's very much, how can we best guide people? It's just the biggest advice we give is just to start slowly, identify areas that are real pain points, run automations, get used to it, and then grow from there. Now, people in the early days of Bullhorn might have started with 5 or 6 automations, and now they've got hundreds of automations. It's just, again, creating those building blocks and letting it sort of unravel from there.
Yeah. So I am mindful of time. I'm just going to say that one takeaway is we don't want to just think about the money. We also want to think about operational metrics, both because they flow through to the bottom line and because they make a better experience for the candidates. And what we found is that automation throughout the cycle also improves your likelihood of being below the 20-day placement mark, which we have found over and over again in our talent surveys, is where 80 to 85% of candidates expect to be. It's what drives loyalty. It's what keeps them working with you. So as we think about the next stage beyond automation, one of the things we found was that there was a huge correlation between leaning into AI and revenue performance. We found a few things. We asked some questions this year about how long people are spending on different tasks now and what they anticipate their time savings could be with AI tools infused throughout the process. The weighted average across all 1,500 was that right now they believe each recruiter is spending a little less than 15 hours per week on search and match, which I think intuitively feels right to most of us, right? It is the biggest lift, and it's where most of the recruiters are spending their time. And then we also are hearing anecdotally that, more and more candidates who are offered jobs are declining them. The pay to move rates are not as high. People are uncertain about shifting. So this just translates into recruiters actually having to source even more candidates to fill the same number of jobs because candidates are so reluctant to move. When you combine that with the slower hiring cycles we've been seeing and lower job recs, it puts even more value on getting that search and match phase, not just right, but done quickly. We know, just a little bit of economic data, and this applies in the UK and Australia as well, that we are seeing, across the globe, that candidates just are not moving at the same rates that they used to. The churn in the labor market is really stalled. So we also asked agencies how much time they believed they could save. And I'm going to say, and Liam can weigh in on this, we actually think it might be more than this, but this was sort of self-reported. When you look at this and you total it all up, agencies think that each recruiter could gain back 17 hours per week by actually deploying all of these AI agents and assistants throughout the workflow. And the way I like to think of that is that 17 hours in a 40-hour week represents 43% of your capacity. So imagine if you could increase your capacity by 43% without adding a single new employee or any overhead, right? So what could your agency do with that in terms of, working to automate some of your middle office and back office functions? What could you be doing in terms of, attending this sort of presentation and learning more about the industry, talking to your clients, understanding their needs, thinking about these higher margin services, all the things that you could do with that extra time. And, we also found that the top performing agencies were already seeing results with AI. They were 50% more likely to say that they were already seeing faster response times as a result of the AI tools that they're implementing, which is, given the early stages of it, I think a pretty high impact number. And I think that's just going to get bigger and bigger as the years go by.
Yeah, another angle to look at on that front is, those savings are amazing, but if you take screening, for example, that 3.6 hours saved, that's just with who we're actually screening today. And if we're screening manually, that might be 20% of applicants, 15% of applicants. If you were to have an AI screen every single applicant, how many hours would that be? Some postings get 100, 200 applicants. That's going to be way more than 3.6 hours in terms of, again, delighting candidates that everyone gets a chance, everyone's actually getting screened rather than just getting an automated rejection email, but it's actually saving more hours because you're able to do all of the work that you couldn't do manually.
Yeah. So just very quickly, we also sort of wanted to understand what's keeping agencies from leaning into AI, and Liam spoke about this at the beginning, so I won't belabor it, but far and away, the biggest obstacle that was listed were data issues, data hygiene, siloed data, concerns about the quality and the accuracy. Everyone understands that data is the fuel that feeds the AI engine, and we all know that this is a hurdle we have to get over in order to really take advantage of all the AI tools that are out there. So as Liam was referencing, the third takeaway we had was that the highest performing firms really are working to delight talent. And one of the ways we measure that is by looking at the all-important placement times. And we found that both automation and AI have a huge, huge impact on placement times. If you look at the difference between the green bars for the people who are automating and the blue bars for the people who aren't, that, they have significantly lower placement times or higher likelihood to be under the 20-day mark. And they were actually 40% more likely to have placement times under 10 days. So we know from all of our research, our own and the rest of the industry, that this is one of the biggest things that is important to candidates. So the technology tools out there really are already reaping benefits in terms of the candidate experience. The other thing we did, and I know this may be hard to see on the screen, these are questions around how you are working with redeployment, how you are engaging with candidates, whether or not you have a strategy for talent engagement throughout the life cycle, if you are submitting them to more than one job at a time. And again, similar to what we found with some of the other metrics, what we found is that every stage of the life cycle matters when it comes to delighting talent. But the flip side of that is delighting them at every stage makes a difference to operational metrics, to their satisfaction, to your likelihood to have that translate into revenue gains. So I see this as a slide that really shows that this is kind of a win-win-win, right? Candidates are happier, clients get the right people placed faster, recruiters are more efficient, and it results in more money, right? So everyone is winning when you really are focusing on how to engage with the talent in a way that delivers what they need, which is good because that feels good to us, right? Like we know that this is a relational business. We got into it because we like people and we want to put people to work. So I find this very encouraging that we do see it flow through to the bottom line. So the last takeaway that we had was that the most successful firms are also working to diversify their business lines. And as I said, move into these higher margin services. And I know someone asked for examples of these. Far and away, the biggest one is project management. So working on site with clients around everything from succession planning to workforce management. They're doing higher level consulting services. I'm hearing more and more from our customers that they are actually competing against big four agencies who have a high price tag, but a low level of specific expertise in the recruitment industry. So they are starting to take on these sort of professional services on-site consulting projects. I'll also say that more and more we're hearing about people offering end-to-end solutions. So they might come in and say, okay, you are starting this new division or this new project team. We're going to consult with you on how to think about it and set the strategy. We're going to help you decide what your staffing needs are. We're actually going to staff it. Then we're going to provide you with like ongoing workforce management tools. Oh, and you know what? That also is going to make us Johnny on the spot for the next thing that emerges out of this that we know is going to be your next staffing need. So we're also going to be the person who pitches you on upselling some sort of next service. Another big thing that we're seeing is reskilling and upskilling and candidate training, and as well as executive and board training. A lot of this relates to AI services. We are hearing more and more from customers that their clients are trying to figure out themselves how and where to deploy AI in their businesses and how to help train their own internal candidates, their own internal employees, as well as future candidates on how to use it. So like one really interesting example, and again, I think I referenced at the beginning that a lot of this is about very specialized diversification. This isn't just saying, oh, we now will manage any projects related to staffing that you have. It's say an executive search firm doing very, very careful board coaching on strategic planning. It's and one really, really niche example that I heard was one of our customers is doing very specific upskilling for attorneys on how to use AI in ways that are compliant with their local regulations and that are compliant with the law, right? So we are seeing agencies lean into their strengths. So if you have been doing, if you are a master of engineering contract placements, but you understand what the new AI requirements are going to be for a very, very narrow segment of candidates, you are leaning into doing consulting projects and, succession planning and coaching and all sorts of support and upskilling in that one narrow area. The counterpart to this is we are also hearing agencies say that they're being pretty ruthless about divesting themselves from the regions, the verticals, the micro segments where they know they can't compete. If they can't beat, one or two and really own that segment, they're being pretty ruthless about saying, we're actually going to close that office, or we're going to pivot to that team to something else, or we are going to lay some people off, because they know in this environment, and to go back to the strategy of gaining market share and share of wallet, they really need to own a space, but they're defining those spaces much more narrowly now. And what I think is really exciting is it's pushing agencies to do a lot of strategic thinking about what really makes them special. What are their power positions? What are their strengths? What differentiates them from their competitors? Since in this market right now, you just have to be better than the next guy. So where is it possible for you to 100% do that, to really dominate? And they are finding these incredibly creative ways to offer services that play to their strengths, offer true value in partnership, and give them that market share gain that they're really looking for, that's going to position them in an area of strength when we do see a return to some sort of better economic performance. Hopefully that answered the question about some examples of higher margin services.
Yeah, I think absolutely. And it's totally worth underlining. It's like inch wide, mile deep type of approach. And because that's what the customers can't do. The customers can't go a mile deep because they're busy operating in a business. And if you've got multiple business units and you're different sort of recruitment suppliers for each function of your company, those recruitment suppliers can very quickly become a vital extension to your capability and competitiveness
Yes.
in the marketplace. This is where you get the trusted partner type of experience, which I think every agency would love to be in right now. So inch wide, mile deep, folks. That's very, very clear message. Thanks, Lia.
And one thing I think that's so great about the inch wide deep approach is that this is something that you can do regardless of the size of your agency. Sometimes if it's just about like spinning off a massive consulting arm, that's not something that's going to be within the means of, a small or a medium-sized agency. But having a niche expansion into something you're already very good at, you can do that regardless of size. That is a business strategy that's going to pay off. So I think that's a wonderful thing for us to be thinking about, because it's so versatile and so applicable to, I imagine, everyone who's on the call. And one of the things that we found was that it's paying off. These new business lines correlate heavily with revenue growth. The firms that are doing this are protecting their margin. They're hedging their bets in the market. So, they're not all in on permanent placements, which, were way less, way less good this year than temp placements. But they are, doing a typical financial hedge of being in a lot of places, knowing that some of them are going to be growth areas. And you can see clearly from the green lines, like, it's working. This is something that the firms who are thinking strategically about what they bring to the market, how they can differentiate from their competitors, are seeing revenue gains. So that is the end of the report. And I know, we have 8 minutes to spare for questions. Sorry to have talked so long, Hung.
Round of applause for Lia for blasting through that. That was amazing. Such a compelling sort of presentation, and really, really very well delivered, Lia. So thank you very much. A couple of things. You can stop the screen share now. Firstly, so there's two things. Firstly, there's the report, which I think is freely available. Is that correct? And yeah, folks, let me know whether you're interested in the report. Drop a note in the comments. I'm sure Mike will be able to send it over to you.
Yeah, I'll drop it in here now.
Yeah, it's available for everyone to go for. So crack through, download that thing, and yeah, fantastic to see those highlights in terms of what are the key sort of things that recruitment top performing agencies are doing. Let's just jump to the questions real quick. I don't think we have many. We've got Shuri here, who's asked a question. Let's go with this one. Start answering. Okay, I'm going to read it for people who may be listening to this only. So, do you see agencies overstepping the use of AI in the hiring process? And what can HR compliance do so that the company policies make use of AI in a more fluid, but have oversight over how they're using it? So in other words, I think what Shrini is talking about here is, are there situations, have you encountered a situation where there's a bad usage of AI by agencies who are trying so hard to get there, but actually they've gone down a path which, is either counterproductive or you wouldn't recommend?
I will say, and Liam, I'm sure, knows more of this than I do, but in some of the qualitative interviews that I did have a few people say, we rolled this out to everyone as an opt-out rather than an opt-in, with a lot of tools and assistance at once, and it kind of overwhelmed our recruiters. And what ended up happening is that they rebelled and we had low adoption. And what we had to do was back off, make it a little bit more of an opt-in. I had one person say to me, we're taking an IKEA approach. We want them to build it themselves, because if they build it themselves the way they want to use it, they're more invested in it. And I think this gets to sort of the second part of the question as well about making AI more fluid. And one of the things that I think is a huge takeaway from a lot of the research that I'm doing on AI is that it needs to be not about leveling everything out and commodifying what we do. It needs to be this tool, this added person on your team, and it needs to be deployed in the way that makes sense for your agency. It needs to be unique, and it needs to keep your special sauce, if you will, right? The thing that's so special about you needs to be reflected in the AI and amplified, not dulled and silenced. So that I think is the challenge we have. And Liam, I'm sure you have more to say about that.
Yeah, I think I was going to say exactly the same thing. It's more about the scenarios where we see customers are struggling is very much adoption, but also really understanding in terms of what makes them good and where they can use AI and how they use it. So, for example, where do you use AI to assist a recruiter and where do you use AI to replace a recruiter at the stage of the cycle? And depending on what, so for exec search, for example, not a lot of high level executives are going to want to speak to an agent. They're going to want that relationship. They're going to have that personal touch. So it's very much about being mindful of what you guys do, how you use AI, in what scenarios you might use it as opposed to a recruiter, but then also how you use AI to make the recruiter more efficient. Do you use it as a tool to help them to complete a task quicker in terms of being an assistive, so help them create a better experience in terms of how they create content, that type of thing? And then where do you use things like a screening agent, for example, where you're replacing the recruiter, but it's not such a personalized experience where you're speaking to a human. So it's very much being mindful of where and how you use it as part of the workflow.
Yeah, really, really good. Okay. I mean, I think sort of the point about keeping this distinctiveness of your business is so important, because I think AI does end up having a leveling effect, isn't it? I mean, at some point there will be everyone is going to have an AI sourcer, everyone's going to have an AI screener, everyone's going to be able to insta generate a long list of really good looking candidates, and you're going to whack out an email campaign to those folks. All that's going to happen, but what is it that's going to make you different as an organization? Those are the relationships that you've built. That's the domain knowledge that you've got. Those are the kind of the micro brands that you have. What I mean by this is that the individual recruiter has a brand into their particular marketplace, and that can make the difference. Those trust relationships that you've built, I think those are the things that are going to come to the fore when AI levels us up in a particular way. Okay, great. Listen, we're coming to the end of this. So what a wonderful session this has been. What are the next steps to this? In fact, we're going to share, of course, the report to everybody. So everyone who's registered to the event on Crowdcast, we're going to email you this report so you get access to it. I know there's hundreds of people who have actually clicked to say that they're attending this event on LinkedIn, but I don't think we have your email addresses. I'm not sure how we're going to get the report to you. If you want to just get in touch with Bullhorn and request it, I'm sure there's a way, probably an AI, that you can just redeploy the report to them. But it's freely available.
I've dropped a link to it on the LinkedIn as well in the comments. So if people want to check the comments,
amazing.
they can see.
Yeah, go check the thread and you'll be able to pick it up. And if you do want it, or you hear about it down the track and you haven't got the report, just get in touch with somebody at Bullhorn. I'm sure they'll be able to direct you in the right place. Okay, Bullhorn crew, what exciting things are happening down the pipe for you? I've got like 2 minutes left, so what else should we be expecting as excited customers and sort of friends of the product? What's down the track for, I guess, Q2, Q3 for you guys?
Well, Q2, Q3 for us is very much releasing as much AO products as we possibly can. So we've got loads of cool stuff in the works. We've got screening agents, we've got search and match agents. What we're really working on is not such a virtual recruiter, but an area within Bullhorn where a recruiter has access to all AI functionality and they can use it in the most easy way possible. So imagine a magic window where you can say, generate me this piece of content, find me this candidate, screen these series of candidates, create me this email campaign, all just through Word or typing, and it does it for you. And that's what we're really working on. That's something that's going to be really special that's coming in the next couple of months. So bringing all of the AI functionality that everybody would have seen in the market and bringing it all together within a window within Bullhorn ATS CRM.
Break a product marketing rule, Liam. When we're seeing this, man, gives a date.
I can't give an exact date, but I'll stick to your Q2, Q3 round saves. I'm not going to break that rule. Haven't yet, and I won't in the future. I know what it can bring.
Okay, great stuff. Okay, that's about it, everybody. Thanks for watching. It's been a fantastic session. I hope you've enjoyed it. We're going to do more of these report breakdowns. In fact, let us know if you're interested in this type of format. I know that Brainfood Live is typically like a discussion show on a topic. We're still going to do those on Friday, but I really want to kind of make this a regular thing. If a recruitment vendor has actually produced some really interesting research, I think we need to hear about it. And this format, I think, is a great way to do it. So let me know in the comments whether you want to see more of this. And if so, I'll start hustling some of these vendors to do more reports and actually come on screen and share it with us in this way. Okay, that's about it. Let's say goodbye to our wonderful guest, Liam Ryan. Great to see you. Thanks for joining. Lia Taniguchi, thank you so much for taking us through the report. Really great to get someone to talk through it. I know the deck is there and it's like, you know what, but so useful to get someone to actually educate us as you talk through it. And Micah Badomvich, thank you so much for joining and being such a great co-host for us as well, and getting on to the comments and speaking to everyone on the chat.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Well. So,
thank you for fitting us in your schedule.
Yep.
No
Thanks
worries.
everyone for attending.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, take it easy, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Cheers, everyone. Bye.
See ya. Bye.
Okay, everyone's out. Let's do that. I think I'm still recording, but that's okay. Okay, folks, hope you enjoyed it. See you actually tomorrow. We're doing tomorrow, hiring manager self-serve. Make sure you tune in Brainfood Live. It is on, I think, normal time. It is Friday, 2 p.m. Tomorrow. So make sure you tune in.